Welcome to TCG Online Service, our last online service of this season. We are so incredibly excited for next week, excited to see you, excited to see people, excited for hugs and laughter and connections that we haven't seen in a while. Talk to me a little bit about what coming back to in-person means to you.
I think one of the first things that comes to mind for me is just the excitement of my kiddos. I know they've really missed everybody. They've missed their little play dates, but they've missed a lot of their friends of all ages too. And so I get a lot of the time asking how people are especially from Eliana. So I know that they're very excited to be back in that space. I'm excited to have dinner together again. I feel like that has just been a huge piece of us that has been missing, that like very community, just unfiltered friendship place that has been a huge capstone of just who we are. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've never been to an in-person TCG service, kind of the way that we do things is we will start at 5 o'clock for dinner. And that is kind of our version of communion. And we come together around tables and just share life together and talk and enjoy spending time with one another. And then we kind of transition into conversation and worship around 6 o'clock. And so we will be sharing tomorrow a huge announcement that we are so incredibly excited about. And so if you are interested in connecting with us in person next week, you are going to want to make sure that you check out that announcement tomorrow that we'll make on our Facebook page that will tell you how to connect, where to connect, what is that going to look like. And we are very, very much looking forward to it. So you and I had a service planned for tonight. We've been doing this together for almost a decade of ministry and planning conversations. And so you are used to moments where I call you or text you and say, I don't think we're going to do that tonight. I think we're going to do something completely different. And sometimes I give you more notice than I gave you today. Today it was only about an hour or so, but something just didn't quite sit right with the conversation that we were going to have tonight. And I think it's a conversation that will be better suited for when we are in person and we are gathered around tables and we can process and talk about things in the context of relationships and conversation. So we're going to kind of rearrange that. And we're going to have a different conversation tonight about what it means to be in community, what it means to have relationships in our life, and the relational way that Jesus led, that Jesus loved, the relational way that we were designed to be, and why it is so critically important for us to make space and time to connect with one another. I have said this many times about you. I said it last night at your birthday party. Happy birthday once again. But one of the things that I shared last night, we kind of have a tradition in our world that the person whose birthday it is, everyone that's present that night has to go around and share either a favorite memory or a favorite characteristic or just kind of an affirming word for that person. And one of the things that I said last night about Holly is that you are one of the most relationally gifted people that I know. And I know that that is both beautiful and a blessing, and it's also a bit of a burden at times. So talk to me when I say community and relationships and the importance of that. Talk to me a little bit about how that plays a role in your life.
Yeah. I mean, I think I personally have both experienced like the incredible, immense amount of harm that can happen inside of relationships, inside of abusive spaces. But I have on the other side of that experienced the incredible healing power of being in safe relationships and friendships and community that energizes and celebrates and calls out potential and catches you every time you fall. And I believe it's incredibly critical and probably one of the most critical pieces of healing and of recovery. Whatever that recovery may be from. And so I think for me, community is that it's so much less. And I understand what this is going to sound like coming from, if this is your first time ever connecting to the Connecting Grounds service, like, ooh, this is who we really are. Like, to us, it is so much less about that faith piece. It's so much less about that gathering together piece with the traditions and all of those things. Like, yes, those things are important for us. It's the safety that a community brings that allows us to share in our joys and our weaknesses and our struggles and things like that. And that is where Jesus is found. Like, that is where we find that compassion, that very authentic piece of who Jesus is, that I think is so often missing in some of those traditional gathering spaces, because it should be a safe place to come and say, like, I'm not okay, or I'm struggling, or this is really hard for me, or this happened this week, or to come in and be like, I need someone to celebrate me because I don't have people in my life that'll do that. And that should be where that community is found. And that's the hands and feet of Jesus, is like, here's a meal, and here is, love and compassion and tending when you're sick. Here's this immense amount of celebration over something that may be very small to the world, but it's meant to you. So, like, let's gather and celebrate. And to me, that's my favorite part of service is, and we joke all the time that, like, there's a lot of times that we recognize, and Alyssa's not with me today, but Alyssa co-leads worship with me, and is a phenomenal gifted artist and singer. But we often don't always have an immense amount of time to practice and like put these beautiful pieces together. Like, our service doesn't, it sometimes is really messy. Sometimes it's really like this, it feels very thrown together, but the reality is, for us, the important piece of our entire week was community and relationships. And so it's a very authentic, vulnerable place to just come and be. And so that to me is community. It is that space to be safe with one another. And I think out of that, people grow. I think people change. I think sometimes people grow out of a space and they grow into something new, and that's exciting and should be celebrated. But I think that should be what our focus is on, is how we're tending and nurturing people in our community, versus the details that are at play.
So I want to circle back around to something that you said, because you made a comment where you said that it's not so much about the faith as it is about the connections. And one of the things that I want to challenge people in general is this idea that your faith is supposed to come from church involvement. I think that's a really dangerous narrative in our modern day Christian culture, that like, I depend upon the church. I depend upon a pastor. I depend upon a small group. I depend upon someone or some outside thing to feed my faith, to shape my faith, to influence my faith. And why I say that that's concerning and dangerous is because faith is an intimate relationship between our heart and God's heart. It is an intimate relationship where we recognize and we hear those holy whisperings to our spirit. We recognize invitations to partner in work that's happening around us that is holy and beautiful and sacrificial. And faith is so incredibly personal to each and every person. And so for me, what church is and what community is it's a place for us to come together and, like you said, to celebrate and to love and to do all of these things. But it's also a place to come together and unpackage things. It's a place to come together and look at pieces of scripture and say, this is complicated. Like, what does this mean to you? What does this mean to me? What did this mean in the culture in which Jesus was teaching it? How do we apply it to our lives today? And that's really what this year's theme is all about. All year long, we're looking at the red letters of Jesus, and we're taking these pieces and we are wrestling with them. We're trying to understand them. We're trying to figure out, what does that still mean for me today in 2023 versus in the context that Jesus was teaching it in. And being able to do that in the realm of community is beautiful. It's important. It's brave. And so one of the things that I want you to know is that community should also be a really safe and beautiful place for you to bring doubts. And a lot of times in religious spaces in the church, doubts are seen as a sign of not having faith. They're discouraged, they're frowned upon, they're judged. But I think for us, we oftentimes welcome doubts, because I think doubts inherently have questions. And to me, questions are what leads to growth, right? Questions are what leads to conversation. Questions are what leads to connection, because somebody else will go, I'm so glad that you were brave enough to ask that or say that, because I've been wondering that too. And you discover you're not the only one that's wrestling in that place, or you're not the only one that's been carrying that trauma. You're not the only person that's been wondering how that actually plays out, or what the nuances of that look like. And so there's something really beautiful and unifying about doubt that I think also challenges us to deeper faith. It challenges us not to just settle, not to just say, I'm going to accept what I've always been taught. I think having doubts and talking about those doubts are incredibly courageous, catalytic acts of faith. And so I know you've got a song pulled up that is a favorite of ours, but it's also a really honest set of lyrics that just proclaims, Jesus, I have my doubts. And I think one of the things I want you to know is that community where it is safe and where it is like-minded should be a safe place for doubts, not a place where doubts are discouraged and shut down. So I'm going to turn it over to you to lead us in some worship that kind of challenges us in that space. Jesus, I'm sorry about last night. Jesus, we both know I tried. Jesus, feels like the world's in pieces. I'm sure you've got your reasons, but I have my doubts. Jesus, I have my doubts. Everything that's right feels wrong. All of my belief feels gone, and the darkness in my heart is so strong. Can you reach me here in the silence, singing these broken songs? Looking for the light for so long, but the pain goes on and on and on. Can you reach me here in the silence? Jesus, what a week we've had. Jesus, has the world gone mad? Jesus, feels like the world's in pieces. I'm sure you've got your reasons, but I have my doubts. Jesus, I have my doubts. When everything that's right feels wrong, all of my belief feels gone, and the darkness in my heart is so strong. Can you reach me here in the silence, singing these broken songs? Looking for the light for so long, but the pain goes on and on and on. Can you reach me here in the silence? Are you there? Can you hear me? Do you care? Are you near me? 'Cause I'm scared and I'm weary. Are you there? When everything is right feels wrong, all of my belief feels gone, and the darkness in my heart is so strong. Can you reach me here in the silence, singing these broken songs? Looking for the light for so long, but the pain goes on and on and on. Can you reach me here in the silence? So, Holly, talk to me talk to me about what it's like to have safe places to express questions and to have doubts. And how has that played a role in your faith journey? Because I think a lot of people would listen to that song and would be like, right? Like a lot of churchy people, I think, would hear that song and be like, whoo.
Yeah.
But I think there's so much beauty and so much worship in learning to embrace and be honest about those things.
Yeah. I share a lot, but I grew up in a very traditional faith space. I think one of the most consistent things I carried out of that season of just a lot of being immersed in the culture of church was like, you aren't allowed to doubt. That there was a fear in having questions or doubting. As a kid, I found safe places in nature when I was in a season where there wasn't that community for me. Because I would run away to lakes and trees and trails, and I would ask my questions in those spaces, and there is no denying that that those places were empty. I was consistently met by my hardest questions, thrown out into the great expanse of the universe with just like a tenderness and a compassion, and just this incredible. And that's part of why I share about it all the time, like the crazy, beautiful interconnections of the world that we live in, and just the relationships between the sky and the trees and the water and the soil and the plants and the animals. And I learned so much in that season about a God who created every single piece of that world, who had this immense amount of compassion for me, and that those questions weren't hard. And so I think that when I re-entered I re-entered church is really what happened. I think there was a very slow progression, and that's really when you and I met, of like us questioning a lot of the traditional spaces that we found ourselves in that time, in a journey where we did a lot of hopping, when we would push that glass ceiling for the gender piece of that. We would push a lot of the theology barriers so far that we would outgrow that space, and we would enter a new space. And each of those spaces there was a lot of growth in, but there was not a lot of safety. I think for like the rawness, and it was really the heartbeat of TCG was like, let's create a space that's okay to ask those questions. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt that in my role in TCG the last 4 years, that I have found a lot of just confidence in those spaces, whether it be service spaces, it be even outreach spaces, it be spaces of some of our different community gatherings where there's a lot of safety and beliefs. There's a lot of safeties with trauma and background to just come and be, and to ask those questions, and that those aren't scary and dangerous, that they are part of that greater inner web of community. So for me, it's incredibly humbling to be a piece of the creation of that space. But to me, it's not even creating a space. It's just like opening up a door, and a space where God's like, I've already been there. Like, I'm already a part of this. And I'm a part of every single one of these incredible, diverse humans that I've created, and their stories and their beliefs. And I think there's a lot of creativity in those places. And
So all this year, we're looking at the red letters of Jesus. So Holly, in the context of this conversation, I'm going to throw a set of red letters out, and I just want to kind of process it with you for a second here. So this set of red letters that we're going to talk about for a few minutes is found in a very well-known imagery that Jesus uses, where he talks about the vine and the branches. What I want to focus on is not that whole story. What I want to focus on is this little piece that Jesus says towards the end of that. And it's this. In verse 12, he says, "This is my commandment. Love each other in the same way that I have loved you." And then in verse 14, he says, "You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you slaves because a master doesn't confide in his slaves. Now you are my friends, since I have told you everything the Father has told me. You didn't choose me, I chose you, and I appointed you to produce lasting fruit. This is my commandment. Love each other. I think a lot of times we talk about John 15 and we talk about the vine and the branches and we talk about this commandment to love, but we kind of gloss over this revolutionary thing that Jesus says when he says, I call you friends. And now I choose to call you friends. Like, what does that mean to you, right? Like, friends, you and I have been very good friends for a decade now. You probably know me better than a lot of people in this world. You get to know sides of me that I don't always show to everybody else. Because as a friend, you are a safe person, right? For me to be honest with, and for me to be ugly with, and for me to vent when I'm angry. And you have probably heard every emotion under the sun from me. Not everybody else gets those pieces. There is something really intimate and beautiful when Jesus says, I call you friend. Talk to me about how that word hits you when you think about it in red letters.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And it breaks my heart that that's an actual, a word that Jesus uses that a lot of spaces I think shy away from. And I don't know why. I don't know the answer to that, but I think that God exists in things that are relatable. And for us, like, it's hard as humans to understand God. And I think that's a huge part of that questioning piece. Like, there's not this picture of what God looks like, whether God, and even those gendered pieces of God that I think a lot of us assume, but don't have this greater picture of. But like, God is so relatable that God comes to us in the Bible in those things that are very relatable. And to me, a friend is the most intimate relationship you can have, and it's because of that. It's like that trusted relationship that is ugly and messy. And I think in a lot of ways a friend is God isn't saying I'm your counselor, like come to me messy and I will fix it and I will listen. God is saying come to me as your friend and I see you as my friend, which means like we also get to see the ugly, like, or the emotions that God has. And I think that that's something that's really dismissed quite a bit, because I see God's emotions in the thunderstorms and in, like the social justice issues, when that God is angry and heartbroken, and you see that scripture, you see that in today's world, and like we get to see that side of God too. God shares that side of themselves with us. And I think that that's really beautiful, but that's really truly how I connect with God now. And I'm grateful for that understanding and that confidence in me to like own that, because I think there was a lot of fear for a while that like, wait, is this okay? Like, no, it's absolutely, it's red letters. So
yeah, I think it's this holy invitation to intimacy, to being known, to knowing someone, right? Like friendship can't be one way. It doesn't work that way, right? Yeah. Like if friendship is only one way, it's not truly relational. And so it is this, like you said, this beautiful invitation that holiness invites us to connect and also to be known by that which is holy. And I think there's something so unbelievably humbling about that. And also I think there's something equally heartbreaking for me, because I think so many people who have experienced God in a religious setting have not experienced that kind of love and friendship and connection that Jesus is speaking of when he says, now I choose to call you friend. I choose you. I choose you with everything that you have been through. I choose you with everything that you struggle with. I choose you knowing you have doubts and questions and that your faith is imperfect. I choose you because I believe in what you're capable of. I choose you because I see value in who you are. I choose you because your humanity matters to me, right? Like that is all kind of embedded in that little sentence that says, I call you friend and I have chosen you. And then he quickly says, and this is my commandment, that you love one another. It's almost like I am choosing you and I am building friendship and connection with you. And I am commanding you to love and build relationships with one another. And to me, that is the heart and the foundation of what the church is called to be. But friendship is messy and community is hard. And so way too often we create spaces that are timed and program driven and designed to, entertain us versus connect us, and designed to, maybe teach us something versus challenge us to doubt and to question even more. And so I bought a new book. Shocker. I am a bit of a bibliophile, which is, for those of you that like to Google my words in my living room, means a person who is a collector and a lover of books. So I'm always on the hunt for new ones and good ones. You and I spent some time yesterday at a bookstore stocking up some new books. But this one is called Liturgies for Hope, if you can see that. And it is by Audrey Elledge and Elizabeth Moore. It was written during COVID, and it was written as a challenge to find holiness in the mundane and to find holiness in the everyday. And I have just absolutely appreciated digging into this every day. So I highly, highly recommend this as just a piece to add to the way that you experience friendship with Jesus. But I want to read this one for you, and then I want to throw it out for a little bit of conversation with you before we wrap up today. It says this. It's called A Liturgy for Friendship. O Christ, I rejoice in the deep satisfaction of friendship, in the unceremonious familiarity of being known, in the freedom to be no other than myself. Thank you for these signs of grace, the ease of conversation, the spontaneous eruption of laughter, the safety of silence, and the relief of finding our way back to one another. Let me never see friendship as commonplace, but as a rare and lavish gift. As playful companions, mature into confidants, protect our growth with the cloud of your presence. Braid yourself into our intertwined hearts. I love that. So that the cords of partnership are not easily broken. I'm going to read that again. And I want you to think of that in the context of what faith community should be. Braid yourself into our intertwined hearts so that the cords of partnership are not easily broken. Teach us the way of covenant friendship so that we may live the words of Ruth. Where you go, I'll go. Where you stay, I'll stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. May we know the unselfish endurance of a friend who loves at all times. May we willingly receive their wounds. May ironclad honesty sharpen us, sustaining our purest hearts and smoothing our roughest edges, slicing away what keeps us from growth. Just as you spoke face to face with Moses, so we unveil our hearts to you in breathless wonder. For you do not call us servants, but friends. We desire this friendship with you, Lord. For even unto our death you have loved us. O Lord, who extends the arm of kinship to all who desire it, this is the greatest joy of friendship, to freely abide in the company of one who loves us. May we know the intimacy with you first and foremost, and with humble bravery allow ourselves to be known. Amen. So, how does that hit you?
It's beautiful. I like that it ends with the word brave, because I think it's actually really brave to exist in that friendship space.
Yeah. So I'm gonna twist that call to bravery into a bit of an invitation. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart and not in a cheesy ploy. But if faith spaces have been scary or harmful or hurtful, traumatic, anxious inducing, I want to challenge you to be brave and to not shy away from community and faith in relationships that could have the potential to challenge you and could have the potential of offering different perspectives and hearing questions that maybe you haven't heard or maybe that you have. And I want to challenge you to the brave act of cultivating friendships and relationships. And I want to challenge you to be open, to be honest, to come into spaces willing to not just be entertained, but also with a heart that is willing to connect and to get to know people and to genuinely develop the ability to care for people. I think that is an ability, Holly, that we have lost in our world of how to care for one another. I'm going to tell you a story really quick, and then I know you've got some beautiful lyrics to close us out. A couple of nights ago, I was home and I was working, and I received a phone call from someone that was volunteering at one of our crisis cold weather shelters. And I could tell immediately when I answered the phone that something was very wrong. She was very panicked, and there was an urgency in the tone. And she proceeded to tell me that we had an individual who had collapsed at shelter, and the paramedics had been called and CPR was being performed. I know it was highly traumatic for many, many friends that were gathered around in that space. I was in my pajamas, right? I was working, but I was somewhat comfy and I was warm. But I knew I needed to be there. And so I jumped in my car and drove to the hospital to meet them. And when I got into the hospital, I discovered that I wasn't the only one that felt that way. There were 2 other individuals that were regular volunteers at the shelter that this man normally stays at, which only opens a few nights a week, and was not open that particular night, but they had heard that something had happened. And so they too came. And Father Ray from Sacred Heart also came, and Bishop Rice came. And there was this collection of us. And I looked across and realized that several of the gentlemen from shelter had made their way to the hospital from down the street. They had, managed to find ways to get there because they too wanted to be in that space. And I found myself just reflecting for a moment on what friendship looks like. Because sometimes friendship looks like cups of coffee and laughter. Sometimes friendship looks like birthday parties and cupcakes and inside jokes. Sometimes friendship looks like sending favorite songs and great songs to each other. Sometimes friendship looks like just being present while somebody cries. Sometimes friendship looks like chicken noodle soup when somebody's sick. And sometimes friendship means showing up in a waiting room and holding space because people matter. And those are the kind of relationships that I truly believe that we are called to cultivate in the context of community, and to let people into levels that so many of us guard and protect. And so as we kind of mark the end of this virtual season, I want to challenge you to find places to connect. If Saturday nights work for you and you want to come hang out, we would love to have you. If Saturday nights don't work out, there's a lot of amazing places in Springfield that are safe spaces to have doubts and to wonder and to build relationships. If you connect outside of Springfield and you need help finding safe places to do that, reach out to us and we'd be happy to help make some connections for you. Life is too important and too hard to do it by yourself. And I think we all want to know that in the end, people are going to be in that space, which calls us to be in that space with people.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn it over to you because I know you've got some beautiful lyrical thoughts on that?
Yeah. If you, again, have hung out with us for any amount of time, you know that our approach to the music side of service is very different than a lot of those traditional spaces. And oftentimes Alyssa and I really try to share songs that connect with us, because I think there's something really beautiful that in our ability, our action of friendship in that space, to share what means something to us and what we often feel very led to hopefully mean something to you, to share with you. It's kind of this is from our heart to yours kind of a space. The song I chose tonight is from a band called Need to Breathe. And they wrote this song with John Foreman, who is one of Alyssa's favorite artists. And he actually is the artist that did Jesus, I Have My Doubts that I did earlier. I just realized I hadn't credited that to him. It's a song called Carry Me, and it's one that I've consistently, it's on my bad day playlist, my mental health playlist is what I call it. And it's this really beautiful reminder to reach out when you're not okay. And it's this ask that says, will you carry me? And I really love that ask, because I think that metaphorically, we need people that are willing to to carry the hard things, to carry the emotions, to carry the weight of whatever we're dealing with. I think also in scripture, it's just a really beautiful invitation and ask of God as that friend to be like, hey, I can't. Yeah. So I want you to listen both as someone who maybe is in a season where you need to have that ask. And I'm going to cry my way through this one, and that's okay. Also not something that most people on here will say is uncommon. If you need that, I just hope that settles in your spirit, that bravery and that permission to ask that, and that invitation that says, here's a space to come and be carried. Here's a space to come and find that friendship with people that will just love you. But also as an action point to be the people that carry, yes. To be the people that are not afraid to carry the weight, to listen to the hard stories, to sit in spaces that are incredibly sometimes uncomfortable and sometimes very triggering. But to do it because there's an immense amount of love, and that love comes directly from that friendship piece that we found with God. So I invite you to listen, whichever space you find yourself in, and most of us probably find us in a little bit of both. So yeah, it's beautiful. I chased you into the light. Yeah, I stayed there to see myself pure. All the ashes, scars they pale in comparison to yours. There are footprints the size of the universe. There are fortunes that no one could earn. So I chased you farther still. I hope that I never return. From the river's mouth to the mountain peak, through the great divide and the valley deep, I need you to carry me. Carry me, carry me, I'm on my way, but I'm in too deep. I need you to carry me. You were calling me into the deep, into waters that no map could find. You were calling me out beyond my fears, where my darkness finds rest in your light. I found a fortress where I could surrender, where my shame didn't hide what I lacked. So I chased you out farther still, 'cause I know I ain't never coming back. From the river's mouth to the mountain peak, from the great Carry me, I'm on my way, but I'm in too deep. I need you to carry me. I need you to carry me. I need you to carry me.
I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for friends who carry me on hard days. I am grateful for the understanding that I have a God who carries me and wants that kind of relationship with me. I pray and I hope from the deepest depths of my core that you discover that same kind of holy love, and that you don't see a God that stands with a scorecard and says you're not good enough, or I know your past, I know what you struggle with, you're not worthy, because that could not be further from the truth. Relationship is what is offered to you, and relationship is what is desired with you. And so I hope and I pray that you discover that and you are brave enough to seek it, both in this capacity with holiness and this capacity with other people, which is also a form of holiness. So we are back in person next week. We'll see you guys in person. We'll still be streaming service, so you can still join us, but it will be a little bit different. So it won't just be the two of us, which we're super excited about. A few announcements. Stay tuned next, or excuse, blah, 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 blah. Stay tuned tomorrow. We will be making a huge announcement, like we said, at 6:30 on our Facebook page. So you will know all the details of what back in person services will look like and all the things. So we're super excited about that. And also, I invite you to connect with us on Monday. Monday night is Coffee and Questions. It's one of our favorite nights of the week. We are moving Coffee and Questions to Wednesday starting in April, but we've got 2 more Monday nights, and then we move to Wednesdays. So right now, we will be Monday night at the Outreach Center. So a little change of location to give us a little bit more room, because it's a popular connecting point. So come, bring your questions, bring your doubts, and come build some friendship and relationships. So we're super excited about that. We'll see you guys soon, and we will talk to you tomorrow.